Hi everybody. Okay, I'm going to give this video another try and hopefully this one will work better for me and to be able to show you how to make this tassel. I have exactly the same supplies I sent to you. I'm going to be making the cafe version to go on my my new bucket bag that I just got from Portland Leather Goods. Isn't that pretty? So what I have is exactly what you have. I have a glue pot. I have a spatula. I have a little piece of leather. I have a clip. I have my 2 pieces of cafe, my scrap, and my 1 piece of oil slick. And then I actually have 3 different pieces that can be used for the top because I want to show you a few different options you have to make your tassel topper. Okay, so first things first. If you haven't practiced yet, that's what this scrap piece of leather is for. I use a quilting ruler because it's clear and I can kind of keep track of how far apart my fringe pieces are. And I have always cut every single piece of fringe by hand. I know there are like templates you can buy and pre-cut fringe if that's your thing, but I've always cut every piece myself. So I've actually pre-cut some to show you. This half over here, these are what 1/4 inch cuts look like. And this side over here is not quite 1/8 inch. It's kind of between a 1/4 inch and 1/8 of an inch. This is my preferred thickness for fringe pieces. So just so you can see those, and I'll show you some different ways you can cut the bottoms of those to get like a boho look, or if you like it straight across, you don't have to do anything with the bottoms of them, but there are lots of different options. Okay, so first things first. We are going to cut our leather. I have 2 pieces of cafe here and I can see already this one's a little more wrinkled. So I'm going to use this for my inner piece because it's going to be a little more hidden. So I'm going to cut this one first. What I like to do is leave a border at the top about 1/2 of an inch. And there are lots of ways to do that too. You could eyeball it. You could use a piece of tape to kind of mark off where you want to stop cutting. I have this cool little tool here. I'm going to use it to just kind of score the leather to keep track of where I want to stop cutting. But you can do that however best suits your needs. Okay, so here I go. I'm going to cut this to the width that I like it. Like I told you, it's kind of halfway between 1/4 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch. And I'm just going to put my ruler down and press my rotary cutter firmly against it. And then just when one smooth movement, go all the way to the line I've drawn. And then just move it and continue. I hope you guys can't hear me chewing gum. I don't want to put music on and get in trouble for not having the rights to play music in the background. So if my breathing is really loud or I'm chewing very loudly, then I'm sorry for that. Okay, so my first piece is cut. I hope you can see that pretty clearly. I'm just going to go ahead and put this to the side and start going on my second piece. I'm going to do the same thing. Kind of mark off for myself where I would like to stop cutting so that I leave enough of a border at the top to put my glue on and make sure that it sticks together nicely. Line up my ruler where I want it, get my rotary cutter, just press it firmly against the edge of my ruler, and then in one smooth movement, just roll the rotary cutter all the way up to the line I've drawn. Also, guys, I've never done anything like this before, so if you have suggestions for me for the next video I make, which will be the February DIY kit for D-ring tassels, I am all ears. And I really appreciate some feedback if this if you take the time to watch this video all the way through, even if it's like, hey, we didn't need to see you cut every single strand of leather. You could have like skipped that part and just jumped to the end where it was cut. I understand that too. Okay, so this is cut. I'm going to put it aside as well. And then here's my piece of oil slick. This one's a little harder to mark because if I score it, you can't really see. I guess it does leave a little mark, but... So for this one, because this is going to be buried between the two pieces of cafe leather that I've already cut, I am going to just use a pen. I'm going to use a pen and I'm going to mark a 1/2 inch border at the top so I know where to stop cutting. See, just like that. And then once again, I'm going to go ahead and cut my leather into the thickness of fringe that I want for my bag. And if you guys are nervous about cutting, please utilize the scrap that I sent. That's exactly what I sent it for. So you could get some practice before you went for it. And obviously these are all, everything I've always made is handmade, and what you're going to be making is handmade as well. So don't be hard on yourself if it's imperfect. The imperfections, I think, are what give the pieces so much character, you know? This leather is backed in suede. It's a little bit thicker, so I have to kind of press down a little bit harder. And when I'm cutting, I'm also putting force on my ruler itself to keep that from moving around. Okay, so my 3 pieces of leather are cut. I know what order I want to put them in to give my tassel peekaboo oil slick. I'm going to put this one, the innermost piece, and then this one in the middle, and then this one, which is my nicer piece of cafe, on the outside. So that's what you see. So before I glue them, I am going to cut the ends of these pieces of fringe to get a boho effect, and I'll show you how to do that, and then I'll use this piece and show you some other options you have depending on the look you're going for, or, you know, do whatever you want. So this is my first piece of leather, the innermost piece, the wrinklier one. I'm just going to use my ruler here and take a few strands and just cut them at an angle like that. And I'm going to just repeat that. Just cut them at an angle. How the deepness of the angle is up to you. You don't have to cut them all in the same direction like I'm doing. You could actually go in with scissors and cut each strand individually afterwards if you felt like it. That is a personal choice. And then this piece is next, and to get some movement, I'm actually going to flip this one over like that and cut this also at an angle, but the angle will be going in the opposite direction. So again, I'm just taking a few strands at a time, using a ruler, cutting an angle upward to give my tassel boho ends and some nice movement while it's on my bag. Okay, that one's done, so I'm going to put that there, kind of out of the way. And then for the last piece, I'm going to go back and flip it right side up again and cut my strands at an angle in this direction again. I'm taking 4 pieces at a time for the width that I cut my fringe, but like I said, there are no rules to this, so just go ahead and do it however you like. Okay. Now this is the piece that I cut ahead of time because I wanted to kind of show you some options. The tools I told you you would need are a mat, a rotary cutter, and a ruler. So that's all I'm going to use as well. Normally I would use like a utility knife sometimes for these thicker pieces of strand, but I'm not going to do that because I didn't tell you that was on your list of supplies. So you can, if you're using 1/4 inch strands, there are lots of different things you could do. Sometimes I like to kind of cut them like this into points at the end. Sometimes I like to cut them just at an angle. Sometimes I like to cut 2 pieces beside each other at opposite angles so it comes to a point like that. What else? Oh, you could do it the same thing we just did before, which is just cut them at an angle, a few strands at a time like that. Now with the thinner strands of fringe, there are again lots of things you can do. I just cut them boho style, which is I took a few strands at a time and I cut them at a sharp angle. And then from my center piece of leather, I flipped it over so that the cuts were going in the opposite direction. But these kind of same thing, you could do it like 2 pieces at a time and cut them into a point like that. You could leave them straight across, which is a very clean, like classic look, which I also really, really love. You could cut them at an angle in a large group like this. I don't know. You could just, whatever whim hits you, I guess. You can use that style to cut your fringe pieces. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna apply the glue to these pieces of leather here because I'm gonna wanna wait for the glue to get kind of sticky. I don't want it to be wet when I assemble this tassel. I want it to be nice and sticky. So I have a glue pot just like you do. I have the same applicator that you have. I'm just gonna open this up. And I have my tassel leather stacked up in the order that I want it. And that's the way I like to make tassels all the time. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this top piece, that's gonna be the outermost piece of my tassel, and I'm just gonna flip it over. And up here where it has not been cut is where I'm gonna apply a thin layer of glue, just like that. This is quite literally what will hold your tassel together. So you don't want to like miss any pieces, but you also don't want to make it very thick. Like I got some on the edge there. I'm going to just use my finger and clean that up. Okay, that's what it looks like. And I'm going to let it sit for a minute, and you'll see after it sits for a minute that all these white lines will kind of disappear because this glue is starting to kind of dry a little bit. And that's what we want it to feel like when we're getting ready to assemble our tassel. So I'm going to take this piece and I'm just going to leave it face down and slide it over there out of the way. And I'm going to do the same thing to my peekaboo piece here. Apply the glue at the top where I left my border. Again, I got a little extra on the side there, so I'm just going to wipe that off with my finger. Put this to the side. And then for the third piece, and then so the way this tassel is lying now disassembled is opposite. So this piece that's going to be on top of the pile is going to be the innermost piece when I assemble them in a minute, and you'll see how that works. Okay, there. All glued up. We just have to wait on that for a moment. This piece here that I sent for you is the piece that's going to go between, or inside the tassel rather. So it'll go through the loop here on your hardware, whatever color hardware you chose. So we're going to put glue on this too, because we want this to stick to itself. So again, I'm just using a little bit of glue on the spatula that I sent to everybody. And I'm just going to apply that on the whole thing. And it's okay if a little glue gets on your hands, it'll just wash right off when you're all done. Okay. So that's that. And I'm just going to, again, put this to the side. Now, while we're waiting for that glue to get a little tacky, I'm going to show you, I sent you each a piece about this big for the tassel top. And I wanted to kind of show you a few different options you could make with this. The most simple, of course, is to just do a simple wraparound. And to do that, all you would have to do is, since I've left the border here is 1/2 of an inch, and you want to cover up the line that you made while you were marking where you wanted to stop cutting, I would just cut my piece a hair over 1/2 of an inch. So when it's glued in place, I don't know if you can see that, but it's like here's 1/2 an inch, and it's really just a tiny bit over so that it hides that line when it's all assembled. So if I were going to do that, I would just cut right here, boom, like that, and then put glue on the whole piece that I had cut, and you can just wrap that around the top of your tassel once it's all assembled. That's one option. Another option is if you wanted to do a 3-strand braid, you could do that really easily. All you would have to do for that is take your piece of leather. I would do probably a little more than 1/4 inch individual strands here. So I'm just going to line that up and cut it. And again, I'm leaving a border at the end here. I'm going to flip that piece out of the way a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch. And then one more, just a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm just going to kind of use my best judgment to cut that extra bit off where the ruler isn't. So you'll have like this much that you can toss to the side. And now I have my 3 pieces. I'm going to cheat a little bit and use scissors so that they're all kind of starting at the same point. I cut one more deeply than the other. Okay, so there you go. Then you would just do like you would normally do to make a 3-strand braid and go ahead and braid this piece of leather. And I don't know how other makers do it, but I always braid if I'm going to do a braided top, I always braid my leather first and then I apply the glue to the back of the braid. So again, I'm sorry because I didn't tell you guys you would need these, but I think a lot of us crafty people already have these little clips at home. I would just clip it to hold my braid in place, kind of get it looking pretty. And then what I like to do, I'll show you what this would look like on the top of the tassel too, is I just kind of cut this into a point at the end here because that is going to wrap around, and this little piece that's not cut is where my braid is going to affix to itself to stay secured to the top of the tassel. So for a 3-stranded braided top, it looks kind of like that. And then I can show you you can also do a 4-strand braid with this. I would just cut these. This is 1 inch wide, and the ones I sent you are all 1 inch wide as well. So for a 4-strand braid, I'm obviously just going to cut these into 1/4 inch strips like this. And then again, I just want to kind of make sure the deepness of my cuts are all the same so my braid looks nice from the start. And for a 4-strand braid, I mean, you can just look this up on YouTube if you don't know how to do it. It's pretty easy. I'm not going to try to teach you how to do that because I don't know if I could. Okay. My God, I feel like I'm breathing really loudly, so I hope I'm not. Okay, here is my 4-strand. Yeah, I'm wearing pajamas, if you were wondering what you just saw. It's a snow day here today. My kids didn't have any school, and we got about 8 inches, and I've been in pajamas all day. Okay, so that's what the 4-strand braid looks like. Again, I would just kind of cut the top here into a bit of a point, and I leave that when I assemble the tassel, because as you wrap this braid around the tassel, this piece that is uncut is going to kind of adhere to the back of the braid there to make sure it's nice and secure. So I'll just put that to the side. Another, I put this down on my, that was silly. Okay. Another really popular style is kind of like the crisscross top, and I can show you how to do that too. So for the crisscross top, you're only going to need 3/4 of an inch. And I'm going to go ahead and cut the excess off right from the beginning. I only swapped it around because I like the way that this part of the leather looks more than I like this part of the leather, and I want this part of the leather to be on my tassel. So if I have to cut a piece off, I'm going to take from the top there. Okay, so I'm going to cut this part off and just put it to the side. And so for crisscross, you can do it either 2 ways. You can do it 2 strands that literally just are kind of parallel, and then they crisscross in the middle, and then they're parallel again on the other side, kind of like that. Or I like to do this 3-strand style, which I will show you. Again, I'm just leaving a little bit at the end here. I'm going to cut it into 3 1/4 inch strips like that. And then this I am going to actually do on the tassel itself. So I'm going to leave it like that. It's just 3 pieces of leather, just like that. And I'm going to show you how to do that. That's the one I'm going to use on my own tassel. Okay, so the tassels themselves, you can see the leather for the tassels, it's turned kind of clear and dark like that. And if you touch it with your finger, you can feel it's sticky, but it's not really wet any longer. So I'm going to leave those there. You don't have to assemble those like super quickly when it gets to be at that level of stickiness. They can kind of sit for a minute because I want to put glue on this so that by the time the tassel is ready, this is kind of ready to go as well. So again, using the same tools as you, I have my wooden spatula and I have my glue pot here. I'm gonna go ahead, I guess I'll use this band again. And I'm going to just go ahead and put glue on the whole entire piece, and I can cut it afterwards to get it just the shape and length and everything that I want it to be. So I'm just this piece is already cut. I'm just kind of holding these strands of leather together with my hands and then applying the glue all in one direction as I move down the tassel. Okay, so you should be able to see a sheen on it where it is completely covered in the glue. And I'm just going to go ahead and stick that, put a little extra up here. Stick this to the side because we don't need it quite yet. And we're going to start assembling the pieces that we've already cut while this sets a little bit. Okay, so we have this piece here that you all received. This piece is going to, as I said, thread through the loop on the clip, and that'll be what you affix your tassel to. So just slide this through the little loop on your clip. And I like to kind of leave some room down here. So just be careful because there's glue on both sides of these. So once it's stuck, it's kind of stuck. You can unstick it, but it will definitely warp the leather a bit. See how I've left some overhang there? I'm just going to fold that up to make it extra, extra secure. So you're going to start, it's going to look just like that. That's just some glue and leather on my hands. They always look like this. Okay, so now we have our pile here. These have all had the glue applied to them, and you can see it's nice and sticky and kind of dark, and that means it's ready to go. I'm going to start with this piece that's on top, which, because of the way we laid it out before we put the glue on, is going to be the innermost piece of the tassel. It's kind of wrinkled. I want it in there, but I don't want it to be like the outer piece. So you can start anywhere, really. You're just going to wrap this around this piece of leather here. So I'm going to start on the back, but again, it doesn't really matter what side you start on. I only like to leave a little bit at the top, but personal taste, you can leave more if you want. So I've just aligned that with the edge of the piece that is affixed to our clip, just like that. And you can see it stuck right away. So I have that piece there, and I'm just going to kind of turn with my left hand this piece and hold this piece taut with my right hand, and it'll just go in a circular motion around this inner piece, just like that. So that's the most inner piece of the tassel, and it's on already. And you can see it wrapped around, I don't know, like 2.5 times. So I'm going to move my second piece, and I'm going to start this second piece right where this first piece ended. So I'm just going to stick those right next to each other like that. And then the same thing, I'm going to turn the tassel with my left hand and kind of hold this leather taut with my right hand. And I'm going to be really careful to align the leather at the top so it's all at the same height. So I'm just going to keep doing that until I am out of leather again, which is right here. So now we have our 2 pieces on. And now I'm going to do the same thing with my final piece, which is start right here where my second piece left off, and just line that up right next to it, and then turn the tassel and use my right hand to push this piece of leather in place. Okay, so here you go. Here's my assembled tassel without the top on it. Now I decided, okay, so if you wanted to use the braided top, here's the 4-strand braid. You would have put glue all over the back of this and waited for it to get sticky. And then what you would do, what I like to do, is I like to kind of hide the seam here. So that would be the back of my tassel. And I would kind of, this would be sticky in our imaginations. I didn't put glue on all of these because this was just for an example. So what I would do if I were going to use the braided top, either one of them, I would kind of figure out where the back of the tassel is going to be. And I want to leave enough of this piece that's not cut to cover the braid. And I don't want it to be bulky or anything. And I could tell already just from putting that there, it's going to be a little too much. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this down a bit. And you can do this even when there's glue on the tassel. You don't have to worry about that. Or glue on the tassel top. So that looks about right to me. That's kind of right where I would want it. So I would start applying my braided top kind of right here on the side with the back of the tassel facing me. So imagine that's sticky already with glue. I would just push that with my right hand, kind of rotate the tassel. As I rotated it, you could see the braid would come around to the front. I want to bring this braid all the way around to the back again. And then this should all be glued, the whole back of this. I would just snip this right here. This would be glued so it would stick down to the tassel itself. And then you would use this piece that you left to wrap around the cut ends and make a nice clean back on your tassel like that. I hope you can see that okay. And then your finished piece would look something like this. But I'm not using that one. Here's with the 3-strand braid. I can show you again. I would do the same thing. So the piece of the tassel top that has the end of the top piece of leather, I hope that makes sense. For me, that would be the back of it. I would know that that's the side that I want to be the back of the tassel. So again, I would just kind of, this would already be glued. I would just kind of figure out the right spot. Here I would leave a little bit of a border at the top because I want to cover that score mark that I made. I don't want to be able to see that. So I would kind of figure out, where do I want this uncut piece to lay so that it's going to secure the braid but also not be visible from the front so it looks neat, you know. And then I would kind of start here on the side. It would be glued already, so this would be sticking to, the braid would be sticking to the tassel. I would make sure I'm covering my score mark. Just stick it on to the right side because I'm a righty, but if you're lefty, obviously do it the left side first. Then just kind of rotate my tassel while sticking my braid on. And then when I got to the back again, I would cut the excess like that. Make sure this is sticking to the tassel itself, the ends, and then just use this little bit at the end here to cover up where the braid was cut and end with a finished product that looks neat and tidy. So that's what the back would look like. And then this is what the front would look like with a little bit of a border at the top, which I actually really like. But we're not using that one either. I am going to use this one, which is one of my favorites. This was just the 3 pieces of leather that were cut into a 1/4 inch each. And I left a little bit of a border at the top. You really can't tell right now because as the glue has set, they're kind of stuck to each other. But again, that's not a problem, so don't worry about that. So I'm kind of pulling them apart here so I can see how deep the pieces of leather are cut, and I can see it's kind of right there. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the top of this a little bit because I know I'm not going to want to have that big square at the back of my tassel. So again, like handmade items, nothing's perfect, you know, just eyeball it the best you can. Okay, again, I'm going to use the same side as the back, which is where the top piece of leather ends. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of measure it out and see. Yeah, I'm going to want it to go to about here or so. Okay, so I'm going to line up the top piece of this tassel top part that I've cut with the top of the tassel itself. And I'm going to start rotating it toward the front, leaving these 3 strands exactly how they were, which is kind of stuck to each other now because they were all glued together. Now when I get to the front of the tassel, I'm going to separate the strands. I'm going to pull this middle strand out. And the middle strand kind of goes right over the score mark that I made, and I want that to continue straight. So I'm going to leave that there. But the top piece and the bottom piece, I want to crisscross. So I'm going to take this top piece here. I'm going to kind of hold it with my thumb and angle it down and then kind of reattach it to the middle piece so that there's no seam line. And I'm going to go ahead and do that again with this bottom piece. I'm going to angle it up and then reattach it to the middle piece again so there's no seam line. And then I'm going to take these 3 pieces of leather and I'm just going to continue them around the back of the tassel, nice and tightly and without any seam line between them, till I get to about, I don't know, the middle of the back of the tassel. And then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut these pieces off. You can just throw those away, because the part that we've left over here where the leather is not cut is going to come back around and wrap over the top of that, just like that, and leave the back looking really tidy and leave the front looking really pretty. So I'm going to kind of squish this a little bit because I think maybe I put mine a little bit off center, but it's still pretty easy to manipulate now because this leather glue has not set yet, and leather is very pliable. So I'm just kind of squishing it to get it more centered. Okay, so there you go. There's my finished tassel. Okay, I hope this was helpful. I'm going to show you on my bag real quick. Here's the new bag I just received, and I guess I would have to put it here on the side. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. Can you see that? Or is it upside down for you? Because I'm gonna sorry guys, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, well anyway, I hope you can see it. I hope you'll share photos when you've made your tassels. If you have any questions, just put them on the post and I'll try to answer them as quickly as I can. And thanks for doing this with me, everybody. I can't wait to see what you make.